Good day everybody, it's Max, and welcome back to IXION's Tips Tutorial, you betcha. Usually I do a 3 tips plus maybe 1 or 2 extra, but there are so many extra tips this time, we're just going to call it all kinds of tips. Let's get to them. Welcome, Administrator, to your first tip. Now you can ignore all the other tips in this video series if you want. Be perfectly fine by me, no problem. But this first tip, don't ignore this tip. And in fact, my biggest mistake in playing the game was not doing this sooner. Because by not doing this sooner, you are losing out on so much free science. Now we are here in Chapter 1. So Chapter 0 is basically you starting the game. It's the introduction phase. You're building your colonists up. You're going through and putting in the research lab and the infirmary and a few of the food products and all the things. And then, of course, it's time to do the vol jump. And sure enough, you've now arrived in Chapter 1. You've gone through and you've done your Chapter 1 stuff. And what you want to do is this. In here, in your lab, of course, there are 4 rings of research science. The first ring is given to you at the very start of the game, so it is ring 0. And then you have 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, these 4 rings have to be done to get certain inside science to work. So, for example, to get bonus science on some of this inner ring stuff, you have to have the first ring of science, outside science, done to get the inside research to work. And it's the same with the ring 1 items. To get ring 1 item extra research items, you have to have ring 2 completed. You should be able to get ring 2 completed before you leave your first chapter. Now, what do we want to do here? As soon as you have enough to do the science of this second ring and you've got these all filled out, you want to go to your tech lab and you want to do assisted promotion. This is going to give you 3 science every 5 cycles. Then, in the next chapter, you'll be working on your next ring. And as soon as you have ring 3 filled out, the next thing you should do is intelligence lab, which then gives you 5 science every 5 cycles. So in this case, by default, your lab gives you 1 measly science every 30 cycles. It's garbage. Total trash. You can magnificently, exponentially increase this by just doing these 2 items. Yes, the other science, there's lots of science you do in here. There's lots of sub-science you do in here. But as soon as you have this second ring done, the very next science you should be doing is assistant promotion. And then as soon as you have the outside of ring 3 done, the very next science you should be doing is intelligence lab. Now, if you're feeling a little more adventurous, computing optimization will give you 5 units every 3 cycles. But it does require you to do all these other sciences, and of course that's a lot of extra work. But these first 2 are so easy. So you can go from getting 1 science every 30 cycles to getting 30 science every 30 cycles. I mean, that's 30 times the science. And trust me, you will spend sometimes hundreds of cycles in a system. So that's hundreds, if not thousands, of free science. In fact, on my last game, I played approximately, 2,000 cycles? That's 2,000 science I would have left on the table if I hadn't done these 2 research items. So, without a doubt, your number 1 tip, your biggest tip, is once you've done your first chapter, make sure as soon as you've got that second ring filled out, get in this tech lab and get that research going. Then you'll jump off to chapter 2, you'll work on ring 3, and as soon as you have ring 3 filled out, come back to the tech lab and do intelligence lab and get all that free science. There's a couple of items in the game that just aren't very intuitive. They don't. It doesn't provide a lot of direction for you, and there's a couple of things you really need to know to look out for. So first thing is planet finding. I believe I have a probe on the standby. I do. Usually when you arrive in systems, you're usually circulating around a planet of the system. That being said, it doesn't really give you a lot of intuitiveness as to go search for other planets. And you should do that. You should be searching for other planets. When you're looking to launch a probe, let's have a look in the upper left-hand corner up here around the exclamation point. You will notice here on the probe scanner, we have an exclamation point indicator. But right beside it, we also have a research indicator. The trick to that is that though they are, I think, trying to patch it, some of this may not show up on your indicator. In other words, the research will override the point of interest. And so in this case, be sure that if you see something about research, to probe it anyway. So in this case, if you look over here, you'll notice that we do kind of get an indication that there might be something of interest there, but you'll notice we're definitely getting something of research there. Definitely send a probe to it. Now, it may not be on your list of indications up top, but chances are there's a planet there and you can pick up free science just by sending a science ship there. So that is one of the things. Another thing you'll notice is that the game will give you instructions at times to do things, but it's not very intuitive for you to go and check the outside of your ship. Things like installing the new Vol engine, installing the Faraday cage, installing several other nifty things that you will run into in your missions. Of course, installing extra items, we'll say sometimes it's in the research center, and you'll go to look and you can't seem to find it. Come out here and check out the exterior construction. It might be something that research has already done, and then of course you've got to install it on the ship. It's not very informative of that. It's very tricky that way. So with that, just keep an eye out for looking for planets with probes that the indicators don't always match up, but watch the research indicator when you're looking for really cool things. The research indicator almost always finds the planets and the things you're looking for. Another big tip, keep your hand away from the accelerator buttons. Don't do it. Just don't do it. One of the big things I see a lot of players making a mistake on is they'll queue up a thing, right? So let's say I want some chips, right? And I've got I want chips, or I want steel, or I want something. So they'll open up, they'll start the factory, they'll do something, and then they kick on the gas button, right? And they're watching everybody moving around and doing all the things. The problem with the accelerator button is that, one, later in the game, when you've got multiple sectors open, each of these sectors is its own city, and one of these can come out of balance very, very quickly. Until you have enough food and all that stuff running across all the sectors to keep everybody balanced, sometimes a sector gets out of balance very quickly just by moving people to the wrong location, or if you're transferring stuff for training colonists. A whole bunch of reasons can happen, and then all of a sudden your sectors are out of balance, they start to crash, they get angry, you've got mutiny, it's all bad. Basically, you have to treat this as up to 6 separate cities, and you've got to be watching these all the time, and you can't do that when you're running very fast time speed. At the same time, out here in space, you'll have ships flying around, you'll have research going on, you'll have storyline going on. You're going to have so much going on that running this in fast speed all the time, you are going to miss out on a lot of things, and this will cause you to have hull integrity problems, or trust problems, or a few storyline trigger problems later on, which could actually cause you to be dead, and you don't want that. So keep your hand away from the super fast button. Next tip. Once you can get the DLS center, put it down, and the very first policy you take is propaganda intense. In fact, I don't see any reason why you wouldn't take propaganda intense. Its stability gives you +2 happiness and allows you to take other negatives. So the very first thing you should do with a DLS center is take the intense propaganda. Now, that means that policy changes can't happen for as fast as if they are on normal, but you're hardly ever going to change policies anyway. So just take the intense propaganda, take the extra stability, and run with it. In fact, the only other real type of policy I ever take in here is the waste policy. Leave everything else alone. So if you take the waste policy, which I will show you why in a second, it adds a -1, which means you're still getting a +1 from propaganda because you do have to take a -1 out of this. Now, why are we only ever taking the waste policy? Well, it turns out that you need waste for your recycling center, which gives you free steel, I call them gears, but they're really called polymer, and free microchips, because we like electronics, right? And of course, you can swap these back and forth and use free waste. But to get that waste, you do have to take the waste initiative, which is in the DLS center, and that is going to be a -1. So for all your sectors, take a DLS center, take the intense propaganda, and then take the waste initiative. And then, of course, that's going to be your extra. Now, with that, I believe one of the other ones here does have one more that I did take, and I'm going to have a look around here for just a second. Oh, yes, it's cryopods. All my sectors only have 2 policies, and that is the intense propaganda and the waste center, with the exception of the one sector that's doing my cryopod awakening research. The one I take here is the cryopods, and go to policies. You want to take workers first. Now, this is going to add a -3 stability to your area, because this means that they're going to wake up workers first before they wake up just normal colonists. That being said, you're going to want that policy. One of the big challenges you'll have is keeping up with a lot of workers across all these sectors, and by them waking up cryopods of workers first, you'll keep on top of that. But you're going to have to fight that -3 penalty. So in this case, you'll notice here, this one sector has like a lot of extra happiness incentives to counteract that -3 policy of the cryogenic center waking up extra workers only. That being said, though, all other sectors, you can usually get away with just having your standard lunacism memorial, and of course your farming areas are going to have the tree memorial, and your industrial areas will have the Marduk memorial. So with that, 2 policies for everybody, except for the one that has your cryogenics in it, and that's going to get the 3rd policy, but it's a big hit, so make sure you load up on some extra plus happiness for them. Okay, so my next tip, before you open up a new sector, be prepared for it. All right, so you'll notice here when you go to open up a new sector, it wants so many things. Okay, you'll want so much steel, you need so many electronics, you need a little food, and you need 40 workers. One of the biggest mistakes I see people do is they will open up their new sectors without preparation, which means you should have, if possible, 40 workers to open up the new sector with, right? So you'll notice here it says, in this sector, I have 155 required workers, but I have 285 extra workers. Now, chances are you're not going to have that many extra workers unless you're doing a lot of cryopod thawing. That being said, you should have 40 extra workers in your zone before you open up your next section. And here's another part B to that. When you first open up the next section, especially the later in the story you go, you're gonna have a hard time. Just accept the fact, okay? When you first open up a section, you've got to plant down basically a maintenance building. You then got to plant down one storage pod and one mess hall. Now you get those for free, but what's happening is you're now uprooting 40 people who are in a very happy place, and you're putting them into somewheres that's not very happy, okay? And so the next thing you really should be focused on is get them a house, right? Get them some sort of place to live, because that will immediately give you one happiness, right? Whether, even if it's just the small quarters, at least you're getting a happiness out of it. Then, if you have access to any of the stability items, start plopping a few of those down. At least make sure you get your citizens to neutral as soon as possible. Then, at the same time, make sure not to forget to put down a second small storage for food and set up your food for transfer. Otherwise, you're going to starve them. So you're going to open up the sector. You're going to put down your 3 free buildings. You're then going to get them a house, then get them a second storage unit to put in food and start transferring food over, then start getting them some stability buildings. And again, just get them to neutral, right? Like Sector 4, angry. Yeah, like as soon as you put people into this thing, they're not going to be happy, right? And you've got to work hard at it, right? Yeah, lack of power in the sector, I'll bet. Yeah, this place is bad, right? So just be prepared to open a sector before you go flashing into the sector. All right, another tip, specialization. Now, specialization comes in one of 3 forms, either population, food, or industry. So in this case, this area is actually specialized in food. So if I have a look at the food monuments, right? So I've actually got all the monuments down here, right? You'll notice here, if I click on the food monument, I'm getting a +2 for this monument, whereas the other monuments are only giving me a +1. Now, a monument automatically gives you 1 happiness, which is good. Holy smokes. I'll tell you, you're going to want that 1 happiness. But when you specialize in an area, you'll actually get more than 1 if you've done the research for it. So it is a research requirement for you to get these extra bonus happiness. But when you specialize and you've done the research for them, you can get bonus happiness out of a sector. Now, to get the food bonus, that means that basically you got to have 2 full food setups. So you notice here I've got a crop farm set up, and I've got an algae farm set up. And sure enough, that has given me my +2 food bonus. Let's now swing on over here to my other food sector. And this is also getting us a +2 bonus. Okay, and in this case, I've just got 2 algae farms set up. Algae farms later on, of course, are just great food processors, as long as you've got the water to keep them going, right? And so you'll notice here, if you have 2 full farm setups, now I have extra bonuses on these ones to get me extra algae, but if you have 2 full farm setups, which would be a 4 or 6 setup, then you'll get the genetic bonus. Now, as for a house bonus, I don't have a house bonus set up, and it's the one that I don't worry about too much. I would actually not be so concerned about a house bonus, but I do have an industrial bonus. If we have a look over here, this area is actually industrially set up. So basically, I've got my electronics factory, a steel mill, and a waste treatment center in the same area. And, oh, well, I see he's not giving me the bonus anymore. He's a little cranky because I think I took a factory out. But in this case, if you can set up, your carbon factory, I took my carbon factory out for the training center, then that will give you that bonus. Housing bonus is the moon, by the way. That is what the memorial here, the Lunacism Memorial. And if you had an area that you had set up just for mostly housing, you would get that bonus. It's not a real great bonus, though. And in fact, when it comes to housing, I would stick more with these optimized quarters. You get these kind of right away, but to get the optimized large quarters, you do have to do one round of research on them. And don't be too tempted to use these cell housing blocks. Yes, it's free, easy housing because you can shove a lot of people into them, but you get 0 bonus for them. So you'll notice here under my happy score, when it comes to my bonuses, I'm getting +2, second from the top, +2 from the optimized quarters. But if you put most of your people into these cell blocks, you get 0 bonus out of that. And you'll pay. You will pay. Happiness is everything in the game. You need happiness. Make me happy. You betcha. Let's have a look at maybe a possible extra bonus tip. Okay, for the big bonus tip, it's watch your triggers. So on a lot of maps, in fact on almost every map, things don't happen until a trigger is given. So for example, this is one of the later sectors that you come to that you got to do things in, and for example, this great big storm comes along, right, and envelops the ship. But your ship won't get enveloped until the triggers happen, right, which gives you lots of time to do things. So keep in mind, when it comes to the game, nothing happens without a trigger. And so you have lots of time here, for example, to do extra mining, right? Send probes all over the place. Mine this area like crazy before starting a trigger, okay? There's no need to go rush off and do science right away or study planets or whatever. Sometimes it's better just to kind of take the first hour you arrive and go mining for a while. Hey, it's great, right? Then start your triggers, because then all that extra resources will give you the extra power you need, the extra resources you need, and all the extra stuff you need to actually survive, right? So in this case, don't always rush off to do all the science and the planets and everything they want you to do as soon as you arrive. Sometimes it's better just to sit back, send out some probes, do some mining, and then once you've collected all these resources that you can, then go ahead and start doing the science and the triggers and make things happen. Same at the end of the level. At the end of the level, chances are it will say, okay, you can vol jump now. No, take some time. Mine the whole place out. I mean, it's great, right? Before you even get to the second to the end map, you should be able to have a fully solar powered ship with almost all the sectors open, with at least 4 or 5 days battery power in all the sectors. You'll be able to have all the crew members unthawed, all the things. The big trick is a lot of people go rushing into the triggers instead of just mining and gearing up, and that's a big problem. With that, I'm Max, and this has been IXION's 3 tips and tricks plus a bonus. Let me tell you, if you got any questions, leave comments. I'll try to help you out as much as I can. I realize the game's a little bit quirky. It's a bit quirky, but when you're running things really smooth, the game goes along really good. The biggest thing I see is that people, their patience, they should be taking a little more time to do things. Don't always be running at full speed. Run at normal time speed. Keep things balanced in the sectors. You'll be good to go. And I will see you on the next one. Take care.